they were looking in the wrong direction. A massive blast rips through the heart of Oklahoma City. Buildings shake, sirens scream, and in those first chaotic hours, investigators and the media fixate on one possibility. This must be foreign terrorism, Middle Eastern involvement, retaliation from overseas. But one ordinary traffic stop just 90 minutes later quietly begins to unravel everything. This is the story of the Oklahoma City bombing, not just the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history at that time, but a case that exposed how quickly assumptions can steer an investigation and how fragile our sense of security really is. Imagine a normal spring morning in downtown Oklahoma City, April 19, 1995. People are heading to work at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Federal employees, parents dropping kids at the daycare center on the second floor, visitors handling everyday government business. The 9-story structure houses offices for the ATF, DA, Secret Service, and more. Feels like any other Wednesday. At 9:02 a.m., a rented Ryder truck parked in the drop-off zone detonates. Inside, a roughly 4,800-pound bomb made from ammonium nitrate fertilizer combined with fuel oil and other materials. The force shears off the north side of the building. Concrete crumbles. Force pancake. In the end, 168 people die, including 19 children. Hundreds more are injured. The scene looks like a war zone. In the immediate aftermath, the search for answers begins under intense pressure. Rescue workers dig through rubble while investigators hunt for clues. A key piece surfaces quickly: remnants of the Ryder truck's axle with a vehicle identification number still legible. That trace leads to a rental shop in Junction City, Kansas. Witnesses describe the renter, a man using the alias Robert Kling. But the broader narrative in those first hours points elsewhere. Just 2 years earlier, the World Trade Center had been attacked in New York by individuals linked to foreign extremism. Many Americans and early media reports assumed a similar hand here. Initial speculation centered on Middle Eastern terrorist groups. Some news outlets suggested the bombing had Middle Eastern terrorism written all over it. A Jordanian-American man was detained and questioned at an airport, though he was never a suspect and cooperated as a witness. Arab-American communities faced heightened scrutiny and backlash. Investigators initially explored multiple hypotheses. International terrorists, possibly tied to the earlier World Trade Center attack. A drug cartel seeking revenge against DA agents in the building, or anti-government radicals. The foreign angle dominated public conversation for a time. This wasn't unusual. The country's recent experience with terrorism had shaped expectations. But it created a tension. While the system mobilized massive resources, early assumptions risked narrowing focus too quickly. Then everything shifts. About 80 miles north of Oklahoma City on Interstate 35 near Perry, Oklahoma State Trooper Charlie Hanger spots a yellow 1977 Mercury Marquis driving without a license plate. He pulls it over. The driver, a clean-cut young man in his 20s, is cooperative at first. But the trooper notices a bulge under his jacket. A concealed handgun loaded without a permit. The driver also lacks a license and vehicle registration. He's arrested on the spot for the weapons violation and taken to the Noble County Jail. That man is Timothy McVeigh. At the time of the stop, roughly 10:20 a.m., he has no idea how close the investigation is circling. He's just another traffic violator. But as federal agents race to identify John Doe No. 1 from the truck rental sketches, a former coworker and the motel manager where McVeigh stayed recognize the description. Within 2 days, while McVeigh is still in custody for the traffic and gun charges, he's linked to the bombing and taken into federal custody. His friend Terry Nichols surrenders shortly after. The breakthrough feels almost too ordinary. A missing license plate. A routine stop. In a case this enormous, the perpetrator is already behind bars. Not because of sophisticated profiling but because of a small procedural slip. Now the psychological layer deepens. Timothy McVeigh was a Gulf War veteran, a decorated soldier who had served in the army. But after leaving the military, his worldview hardened. He became deeply immersed in anti-government ideology. He sold guns at shows, distributed literature, and viewed the federal government as an oppressive force encroaching on individual rights, especially gun rights. A pivotal influence was the 1993 Waco siege. McVeigh had traveled to the site during the 51-day standoff between federal agents and the Branch Davidian religious group. He watched what he saw as government overreach. When the compound burned on April 19, 1993, killing about 76 people, McVeigh was enraged. He saw it as confirmation that the government would kill its own citizens and that the public would accept it. The Oklahoma City bombing occurred exactly 2 years later, a date chosen deliberately. McVeigh also drew from events like the 1992 Ruby Ridge standoff, where civilian deaths occurred during a confrontation with federal agents. He read the Turner Diaries, a violent novel depicting a rebellion against the government, and found resonance in militia movement ideas that feared authoritarian control. His identity seemed constructed around a sense of righteous resistance, the government as the bully, himself as the avenger. In letters and statements, he spoke of collateral damage and framed the Murrah Building, which housed agencies like the ATF, as a legitimate target. Behavioral analysts later noted how his post-arrest demeanor mixed calm detachment with ideological conviction. He showed little immediate remorse, viewing the act through the lens of his perceived war against federal tyranny. Yet contradictions appear. A man trained in discipline who made elementary mistakes, dropping the truck keys nearby, using a traceable rental, getting pulled over so soon after. Some analysts have suggested his actions reflected overconfidence or a belief he wouldn't be stopped so quickly. This raises unsettling questions about the mind behind the crime. How does a former soldier, once sworn to defend the country, reach the point of murdering civilians, including children, in the name of freedom? Motives appear rooted in a mix of personal grievance, ideological echo chambers, and a distorted sense of justice. McVeigh allegedly saw the attack as payback for Waco and a wake-up call to the nation. Whether he acted with others beyond Nichols and Michael Fortier, who provided testimony after a plea deal, remains debated in some circles, but the core conspiracy was proven in court. The investigation succeeded in key ways. The FBI mounted one of its largest efforts, involving thousands of agents. Evidence from the truck, witness identifications, and forensic links tied McVeigh and Nichols to the plot. McVeigh was convicted in 1997 on multiple counts, including use of a weapon of mass destruction, and executed in 2001. Nichols received life sentences. The system delivered accountability for the main perpetrators. Yet fractures appeared too. Early focus on foreign involvement reflected real contextual pressures but highlighted how prior experiences, like the 1993 World Trade Center attack, could shape assumptions before all evidence spoke. Media amplification of the Middle Eastern angle fueled public fear and, in some cases, prejudice, even as investigators pivoted based on facts. Procedural issues later surfaced, including belated disclosure of thousands of documents to the defense, which briefly delayed McVeigh's execution and prompted internal reviews. Some observers have questioned whether additional leads, such as potential wider militia connections, received full pursuit, though authorities maintained the case against the convicted men was solid. If investigators had stayed locked on the initial foreign terrorism narrative longer, how much time would have been lost? How close did the case come to veering off course before that traffic stop forced a redirect? The Oklahoma City bombing forced a national reckoning. Terrorism wasn't only something that happened over there. It could come from within, fueled by domestic grievances and ideological radicalization. It exposed vulnerabilities in how we profile threats and the speed with which bias or expectation can influence direction. In the end, justice convicted the men who built and detonated the bomb. But the deeper fault lines, the ease with which a seemingly ordinary American could radicalize, the institutional reflexes that narrow vision, the thin line between routine policing and catching a monster, remain. What do you think happened in those early investigative hours? Could more have been done to challenge assumptions sooner? Or was the pivot fast enough given the chaos? Comment below. And if this case of justice, both succeeding and fracturing, left you unsettled, check out our episode on another investigation where systemic blind spots nearly let the truth slip away. Link in the description. Thanks for watching the True Crime Report. When justice fails, or barely holds. See you in the next one.